Welcome everyone. I'm Brandon Shoyo Sensei, and I'll be doing the service tonight. We're going to begin with verse of the Kesa. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Gatha of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Please stand. Three bows. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us. It fills our sacred space, guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom. We offer it on behalf of all beings. You may be seated. Homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Three treasures. I go to the Buddha for refuge. Being one with the Buddha, I resolve to each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and to awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for refuge. Being one with the Dharma, the gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for refuge. Being one with the Sangha, in the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. Metta prayer. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. So tonight we have a silent meditation, a 20-minute meditation, and I feel like I should ask, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but does anyone need instruction for meditation? So I'll go ahead and set my timer here. Hopefully we get some really good background noise, some burnouts and definitely some car honks. But I'll go ahead and set the timer now. I'll start with the sound of 3 bells, and I'll end the meditation at the end with the sound of 3 bells as well. The bell will ring 2 times. During the first bell, you can bring your hands together in gasho. During the sound of the second bell, you can give yourself a slight bow. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here and now. And reciting the sutras, hearing the Dharma, and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting 3 treasures, to the 16 guardians, and to all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of this Sangha, and to all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved in the mind flower bloom and eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all the teachers of this Sangha. Let their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with the Buddha Dharma. We pray for the health and well-being of all those suffering from disease, of body, mind, or spirit, those working toward the healing of those afflictions, and for the grieving. We pray for all those suffering from violence, for all those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned, and for all refugees. May they be serene through all their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Dedication. Sabe sada sada hantu avira sukha javino katam punam phalam sabe bhagi bhavantu te. All beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings springing from the good that we have done. So, I thought tonight we would do 2 things. The first thing I wanted to talk about is chanting. So I brought a little book here that was somewhat inspired by our Thursday meetings that we do on Zoom. And the second thing I wanted to talk about is something that I think Neil and maybe a few others can relate to, is a practice that the late Toyo Kobose taught us about toilet gasho and other related sort of moments where you can find some time to practice, whether in the bathroom, whether in traffic, or just about anywhere else. But I wanted to talk about chanting because we read all this stuff, and it sounds sometimes repetitive, sometimes it's spoken 3 times, it's repeated with emphasis. And in Buddhism, you hear a lot of chanting. And sometimes it's in a different language. It's in Pali. We have some words on here like sabe, sada, sada, hantu in Pali. And other times you'll hear stuff in Sanskrit. So sometimes we hear these foreign sounds, this foreign language. And if you've ever been to White Sands, you'll hear chanting in Vietnamese. And there have been times when I've been there where there was Japanese, and then it was translated to Vietnamese, and then eventually you're waiting for it, and it's like, oh, here comes the English part. So all this chanting is taking place. And when you first encounter chanting, it sounds a little robotic. And if someone who is outside of Buddhism hears it, they're like, is that memorized? What is this cadence, you know? And often you'll hear a sound where there might even be a drum going, kind of keeping the cadence. Sometimes you'll hear a series of bells going throughout the chanting. And for many people, I mean, myself possibly included, when I first came to one of these meetings, I was kind of like, I don't understand what this chanting is. Like, why are we saying this? What's the purpose? And at the end of the day, after some time, you realize that the Dharma is found within this chanting. You know, the Buddha's teachings are all found within the chants that we say, whether it be a sutra, like the Heart Sutra, which we didn't chant tonight, but there are many other sutras that we typically chant. Like some of these others too, like some of these dedications that we say often sound like chants. So what I wanted to do really quick is read from this Shin Buddhist manual. If any of you have touched base with us during some of these Zoom meetings, we've been reading the Nibutsu. And it's a Shin Buddhist text, and it's all centered around the work of Pure Land Buddhism, Shin Buddhism specifically, and specifically the teacher Shinran. And it's been a cool couple of weeks. We've been working with the Nibutsu, and a few months back, we were working with the 3 Pure Land Sutras, kind of like diving into them, reading through them, and trying to extract meaning from them. And within Pure Land Buddhism, just like most other forms of Buddhism, there's lots of chanting. In fact, this book here is just filled with countless chants, many of them in Japanese, with translations. And the chanting, of course, in Japanese sounds quite different than in English, but a lot of the meanings overlap fairly closely. So I wanted to read this excerpt here and share with you one chant that is commonly used to conclude a service in Shin Buddhism. So it says here, what we experience by chanting. Chanting in Shin Buddhism has a meditative aspect, a ritual aspect, and a learning aspect. The meditative aspect of chanting is the same as the meditative aspect of sitting. Being fully engaged in sitting or chanting enables us to focus on the present moment. Focusing in this way is helpful before listening to a Dharma message. The meditative aspect of chanting is available if we do not know the meaning of the words. Chanting also has a ritual aspect. Rituals bring our views into alignment with a timeless message by reenacting events or stories that express the Buddhist teachings. In chanting the sutras, we maintain a link with the disciples of the Buddha who transmitted these words over the centuries. The ritual aspect includes the feeling of oneness that develops among people who participate. The learning aspect of chanting comes through listening to the Dharma. True listening takes place when we grasp the meaning of the words. It would be difficult to understand the words solely by chanting an English translation of a Chinese text. Instead, we learn to appreciate the meaning by attending study classes and by becoming familiar with the separate English translations in, for example, this service book. So most Shin Buddhist chants conclude with the verse of Ikoku, or directing virtue to all beings by the Pure Land teacher. And in English, it goes, I vow that the virtue of this truth be given equally to all. May they awaken the Bodhi mind and realize the realm of peace and joy. And then there's also a Japanese translation here as well. So I think chanting is one of those things that if you're sitting by yourself, if you're sitting practicing by yourself, it might sound a little odd if you're chanting all by yourself. Collectively, though, when we're together as a Sangha, there's a little bit more power in that, and a lot more people feel comfortable because it's sort of like being in a chorus, you know, there's that group mentality. Often, for a lot of practitioners, if I was going to sit in the morning and I was going to go through my daily ritual, it's very unlikely that I'm going to chant out loud for practical reasons because I would wake up my family. I'd probably get the dog barking, which would then wake up the cats, which would then wake up my wife and my kids, and before you know it, they'd all be up, and there goes my practice, you know, for that time being. So typically, if I was to chant something, whether it was the Heart Sutra, whether it was any of the common ones that we typically do in service, I would just internalize it in my head. You know, you can voice it silently to yourself. You can treat them as a mantra, where you just simply repeat it over and over again to get yourself in a state where you feel kind of calm, and then you can transition over to meditation. But I think chanting is a very, very practical tool that really expresses some of the essence of Buddhist teachings. And there's, you know, centuries and centuries of Buddhist teachings that can kind of get boiled down to some very fine details and very practical uses, and a lot of this is expressed through chanting. And I have, at times, like Neil and Sensei Morris and some other members of our Sangha, like, participated at White Sands. And there's still something powerful about chanting in a language that you don't even speak. You know, there's that cadence, there's the instrumentation, and there's that togetherness of being with the Sangha that's still very meaningful, that makes being in a Sangha so great. You know, it's so much more powerful. And I think chanting is a reminder of the three jewels of Buddhism too. You know, we often say things in three. You know, we will repeat something 3 times. And we do that for a variety of reasons, but one of them is to remember the 3 jewels: the Buddha, the original teacher, of course, the Dharma, the teachings, and of course the Sangha, which is you guys and essentially all sentient beings. So I just wanted to call attention to chanting tonight before going into another kind of a story, kind of some practical stuff tonight. Because I know if you've come into a meeting for the first time, even the 10th time, the 15th time, chanting is kind of weird if you don't really put it in context and realize that it's a practice, it's a learning effort, and essentially it's the essence of the Dharma. So, and hopefully you guys will have some questions, or we can engage in some conversation here in a second, because I know the mic over there is live. But first, I wanted to kind of tell a little story. So during the pandemic, it was very common for adults, for parents especially, to teach children to sing happy birthday while they wash their hands, to make sure they were thorough. And it's a practice, essentially, you know, through repetition, and kids get really good at it. And this week, you know, we have in our house kind of the bathroom that's dedicated to our kids. And my daughter, who is 6 years old, you'll hear her in there singing happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. And it's interesting to see, you know, someone washing their hands, because when you look really close, it looks like gasho, you know, where we bring our hands together, kind of like wisdom and compassion kind of coming together. Of course, you got to get a little bit closer and really get involved to really truly clean your hands. But it reminded me in the last couple of weeks, thinking back on you know, some past teachings that I've experienced from some other teachers, and especially Reverend Koyo Kabos. And I think Neil might remember this, but one of our classes when we were in Bright Dawn, I think it was directly taught by Reverend Koyo, but he talked about doing like essentially toilet gasho or bathroom gasho, where you just take the time to essentially find practice opportunities anywhere. And he mentioned the bathroom was a good place because it tends to be quiet. You tend to have the space to yourself, and you know, it gives you a moment to, you know, express gratitude that there's working plumbing and the toilet flushes and the sink works and stuff like that. But I found myself, essentially because we've been doing a lot of Shin Buddhist stuff in the Thursday Zoom calls and reading through a lot of Pure Land text, I found myself, instead of singing happy birthday, so I don't want to sing happy birthday every day. I want to get older and older and older. So I've been singing essentially quietly, you know, singing to myself as a result of this Shin Buddhist stuff. I've been singing some of the Pure Land chants, you know. And specifically, I've been saying Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. And that's a big part of Pure Land Buddhism. And you'll hear Pure Land Buddhists say that often. But it's such a simple thing where it's like, you know, you're washing your hands, you're typically in a rush. You know, we tell kids to sing happy birthday, and yet if you watch most adults, they're kind of like, I gotta get back, I gotta get ready for work. And they're like, boom, they're done. And maybe they're sanitized, maybe they're not. That's up for debate. But taking that few seconds to really sit there and thoroughly wash your hands, saying possibly a Buddhist chant, or saying your favorite, you know, little teaching reminder from Buddhism is, in my opinion, very powerful. And then the Butsu for me that we just learned, this teaching from Pure Land Buddhism, it really kind of, it got me in this habit where when there's a moment, when there's an opportunity, not always in the bathroom, all right, not always washing my hands, it's just nice to have something in that toolbox to just grab onto. And in my case, say Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So it's nice to have these little, you'll hear gathas sometimes in Buddhism, like little short pithy sayings. Sometimes maybe you might say a koan, if you're more into Zen Buddhism. But in my case, saying Namo Amida Butsu is just what seems to sit right now. Who knows? That practice might change over time. But I wanted to throw it to you guys because I see the green light is on. So if you want to jump on the mic, you can. And, we can have a conversation back and forth, or you guys can have a conversation together. And we'll see how, hopefully this mic doesn't mess with this one. You're so strong. You're so cool.
Sensei Brandon, I guess first I wanted to relate with, and I always, I guess there's two types of chanting for me. It's the personal chanting that you do individually, but what you spoke on, the collective chanting that we do as a Sangha, it reminds me of probably the favorite part of my Christian background, or one of them, and it was always an opportunity to sing. And I think that one thing that singing or chanting does for me is it brings you in the moment. So like meditation, I think it brings us present. And so I feel like that you touched on that, and individually, I know it can be helpful when even it's hard to follow the breath. What I wanted to ask you was, do you have resources or suggestions on chanting outside of the Sangha?
Ooh, I think that's good. For me, I rely heavily on chanting, essentially because in my morning practice, I know there's the possibility of things getting really busy. So I have to be really skillful about making the time for my practice in the morning time. And I know that monkey mind will sometimes set up that to-do list. I got to get the kids out the door. We got to drop them off here. We got to get them here. Chanting kind of allows me to kind of center in and be mindful of right now. And I do it for myself first and foremost to get myself in the mindset, to be ready to sit and hopefully have that stillness in meditation. But then in Buddhism, often we do chanting to bring ourselves to the attention of others, to move beyond our ego self and to really think about the greater world out there, to think about all sentient beings. So I like chanting in that it can be a humbling experience too, because it makes you take into effect, like, there are other people out there, there are issues out there beyond you. And hopefully, sort of having our bodhisattva vow, we can do good by other people. I think a book like this is filled with a lot of chants. Thich Nhat Hanh has a lot of liturgy books. There's a lot of Buddhist liturgy books that have tons of different chants. And like anything, trial and error, you're going to find one that just fits your personality, it fits your time frame, whatever time you have to work with. But there's so many liturgy books out there. And, like right now, and in my mind, we've been doing all this Pure Land Buddhist stuff, so that's kind of what I've been leaning on a little bit, but there's no reason why you couldn't pick something up from, Soto Zen, or, do something from Tibetan Buddhism, whatever kind of fits your way of practice. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Sensei Brandon, the chant that you personally use, could you tell us what that means, a little more about that?
So, like a lot of things within sort of a religious context, like there are maybe different sects that might put different layers of meaning to things, but essentially, when you dive into Pure Land Buddhism, there's a couple key teachings. When you say Namo Amida Butsu, you're basically calling the name of Amida Buddha. And Amida Buddha is kind of a central character in Pure Land Buddhism. And it can get a little bit complicated, but one of the things to kind of backtrack to is within Shin Buddhism, there are a couple key teachers. There's Shinran, who is probably one of the most well-known and has origins in Japan. And he really emphasized this idea of the primal vow. So the primal vow is this idea that, Amitabha Buddha at one time was a bodhisattva who wanted to help people. And he took this vow that he was going to reach all sentient beings and help them out. And his vow was, he was going to shine light on the world and, reach the dark corners of the world and do good for all. And when you call out Namo Amida Butsu, when you're calling out Amitabha Buddha's name, it's different than, say, a pure prayer where you might, like in Christianity, might be praying to God. You're trying to move beyond that ego self. So you're trying to realize the power of other and realizing how in Buddhism, this comes up all the time, there's interdependence. There's connectedness. So many of our troubles are rooted in the fact that we think about I and myself, and I worry about my worries, and I create so much suffering because me, ego, what I do is best, and I forget to think about the well-being of others. So saying Namo Amida Butsu is just one practice of sort of trying to remind yourself to move beyond that ego self, to think about others. And the idea there is reaching this state of Pure Land. It's kind of like enlightenment in some schools of Buddhism, where in Soto Zen we might sit in Zazen, we might even stare at a wall for a long time, and we're essentially seeking enlightenment through that practice. Whereas in Pure Land, you'll hear the chanting of Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. You'll hear it often. You'll hear it at the beginning of services, at the end of service, in the middle. And it's that repetition to get you to move beyond that ego self, to consider other, and to remember that Amitabha Buddha had that vow to basically save all beings. And you're trying to sort of replicate that and consider other. And so that's just a reminder of saying, some people would just say saying the Buddha's name and trying to sort of hold on to the teachings of the Buddha, remind yourself of the teachings of the Buddha so that you can understand the Dharma and that you can benefit the Sangha and, of course, benefit all sentient beings. So there's a lot to Pure Land Buddhism. There's a couple of main sutras, and a lot of it will give meaning to why Pure Land Buddhists, will chant, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So Pure Land Buddhism, like any form of Buddhism, is really intriguing. I think it's very beautiful, and there's a lot of cool symbolism. It's often confusing. I know me and Sensei Neil went through a program where the background for Bright Dawn was a little bit of Zen, a little bit of Soto Zen, a little bit of Pure Land. And there were little elements here or there that would pop up, kind of blend together throughout the process. And in Japan, Pure Land Buddhism is a big practice. And we see it in the US and a little bit in the West Coast. It's in California. It's in some other cities in the West Coast. And historically, you would see it a lot in Chicago, where some early Buddhists from Japan kind of settled and so forth. But I think when most Americans think of Buddhism, they think of Soto Zen, someone sitting in Zazen, and they probably think of Tibetan Buddhism. It's very colorful. We think of the Dalai Lama. And so when most people come to Buddhism, they're probably thinking of it through this Tibetan lens or through Zen Buddhism, which both are great. But this is a big, big part of Japanese Buddhism. So it's a cool practice. Like anything, just try it out, Start with some training wheels and see where it goes. Anything else? Maybe I should ask each other questions. Get into a debate. Fight it out. No, okay. Anything else? Let's see. Time. for now. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and do the great vows for all. Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Friends, I respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Each of us must strive to awaken. Awaken, take heed, do not squander this life. So we will take a moment to bow to the Buddha. To the teacher. And of course, to each other, the Sangha. That's it. Thank you, guys.